guys, it's Khaki. I wanted to talk to you today about something that I have done a couple of videos on previously, but it's been quite a while. And I have had several people ask me about these feelings that they're having following bariatric surgery. Sometimes we feel things that we didn't anticipate. So let's talk about it. In those of us who get to the point of needing bariatric surgery, it would be extremely rare for us not to have used food in ways other than to nourish our bodies. And after we have bariatric surgery and we are successful and we feel better physically, sometimes there's an emotional grieving process that we go through. Often we find that we can't do the things that we used to do as far as using food to celebrate, to cope with things. A lot of times we find, I know I have, that we grieve being able to take part in things in a way that we no longer can. For example, one of the things that I used to enjoy doing a lot was going to wine festivals. Yes, I overindulged when I did that. I would go to a wine festival, which included numerous wine and food tastings, and I would go with friends. You would spend a whole afternoon eating and drinking and being merry. I can't do that anymore. The cost of the ticket would be silly for me to go and not be able to partake in things. And I miss it. I've always said I would be honest with every emotion and everything that I have dealt with, and that's something that I really do miss. At Thanksgiving or at Christmas, sometimes when I'm sitting around the table and I'm looking at my family members and they've got plates piled high and they're going back for seconds and they're getting to try all of those yummy desserts, and I can't. I miss it sometimes. A lot of times I miss when I have a crappy day saying to one of my coworkers, let's go out for some apps and margaritas or martinis. And I can't do that anymore. I can go out, but it's kind of like, what's the point? And that's where a lot of times we don't recognize those feelings as grief. We, even when we're doing great physically and overall emotionally, it's okay to be sad sometimes about the things that we cannot do anymore or can't do in the same way. Food has been, for a lot of us, I would dare say almost all of us, the one constant in our lives for the majority of our time here on earth. It's been our friend, it's been our comforter, and it's always been there. You've always been able to turn to it. We as a culture use food to celebrate. We use food when we're mourning. We use food when we're happy. We use food when we're sad. At birthdays, we go out to a nice restaurant. Sure, we can still do that, but it's not quite the same. I know that sometimes you will have friends and family say, I miss the way things used to be. And it's okay for you to miss those as well. I want people to know, and I just had this conversation a few days ago with a patient. They had been very successful in their weight loss journey, had lost half of their body weight, felt wonderful, able to do things that they hadn't been able to do probably their whole adult life. And yet they were struggling with some depression a year and a half out from weight loss surgery. And they were questioning me, why? Everything is going better than it ever has. Why do I feel this way? And we sat down and talked about why do they feel this way? What has changed? And it went back to mourning the loss of their old self, of being able to use food in those ways and being able to do those things. I suggested for them, let's let's name it. It's grief. You're grieving something that isn't there anymore, that you can't do anymore. But let's look at what you can do now that you used to not be able to. You can go to the park and play with your grandkids. You can fit in an airline seat without having to have an extender. You can push back from the table and not be miserable sometimes. Those are some of the many things that you've added. Yes, we lose things. Does it make us regret having bariatric surgery? For me, it hasn't, but there is definitely a sense of loss, and that's okay. That is okay. We can never close one chapter or move on to something else without there being a goodbye to other things. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It doesn't mean that you made a mistake in having bariatric surgery. It doesn't mean that you like the fat you better. And sometimes it's okay to like the fat us in certain ways better. But it is important to acknowledge that and to have a plan. I tell patients, when you would have used food, when you have a crappy day, when you have a fight with somebody, when you are tired, when you used to reach for that sleeve of Oreos or that big glass of wine, what can you do instead? Have a plan. Can you call a friend? Can you go for a walk? Can you do some yoga? Can you sit and watch YouTube videos? Whatever it is, whatever helps you. Have a plan for something that you can do other than that. And just know that it's okay. Everything is not always sunshine and roses all the time, and that's life. And acknowledging that and putting a name to it is an important thing. I would love to hear from everybody. Where are you at in your journey? Have you experienced some grieving for your old self, for things that maybe have changed in your life? How have you dealt with it? I would love to hear video ideas. As I said, I've done a video on this previously, but I felt like it was coming up enough in conversation that I needed to do another one and address it maybe for new viewers. Also, this is Cancer Awareness Month. I have a dear friend who was diagnosed with colorectal cancer last week during a routine screening. I would like to remind everybody, get your screenings when it's appropriate for you to do so. Colorectal cancer is something that is asymptomatic until it's in advanced stages. Catching it early makes it curable. Waiting until you have symptoms, unfortunately, a lot of times it's not. So just remember that. Guys, I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.